Guys, what the hell? Don't do my boy like that. If Louis dies this episode,
Please don't.
I'm so scared. I'm not gonna talk about it, but you know what I know? These writers have something fucked up about them. Instead, I'm gonna chat about what I'm gonna call the big three doctors. What the fuck? Louis. His ghost. Al-Hashimi, Langdon, and of course, Dr. Robby. So for the past 4 episodes, these three have really been at odds with each other. Except for Al-Hashimi and Langdon, they seem to get along pretty fine. You know, like in Hollywood, where they have like the love triangle, but really it's more like a love arrow, because like 2 of them just are like enemies. They're not in love with each other. This is like a hate arrow. So for the past 4 episodes, Robby and Al-Hashimi have really been at each other's throats. It feels like Al-Hashimi's trying to establish dominance. She talks about following Robby around and learning from him, but then she also came in really early to establish all these different protocols like AI charting and patient passports. Whoa! Then Robby has been pretty passive-aggressive to her, seemingly worried about handing over his ER. I've never done the string thing before, so my rule of thumb is if it starts at the name, whoever the string goes to, it's like Robby doesn't trust Al-Hashimi, not Al-Hashimi has no trust in Robby. Maybe it should be the other way around. But no, this is how I'm doing it. Then Langdon is on his hands and knees begging Robby to be nice to him again. And then Al-Hashimi and Langdon kinda chillin', she's fine with him. So, Robby, Al-Hashimi, bad blood. Robby, Langdon, like an owner and his misbehaving dog. And Langdon and Al-Hashimi are probably going to start an intervention if they hang out for like more than 3 minutes. Let's start with Al-Hashimi and Robby. There's something interesting that I wanted to point out. At the very start of the season, she talks about shadowing him to understand what he's doing and how he does it. But it's now been like 4.5 hours. You know, the day's really picking up. It would be good for them to divide and conquer, which they kind of do, but at the same time, not really. Al-Hashimi doesn't seem to want to leave Robby with his own patients. Granted, Robby was the same, up until this episode. Early on, Al-Hashimi calls out Robby for treating her like a resident rather than a fellow attending.
Why are you treating me like one of your residents?
I'm not.
He was. But after this, as well as a moment later on when she points out that he's hovering again, it seems like he starts to let her be. There we go. This is probably helped by the stretched staff and the busy day, but there are a couple points where Robby will go and check in with Al-Hashimi as she's working on a patient, but then go somewhere else to check on his own patients, and he just is fine with that. But right now, Al-Hashimi doesn't seem to be there yet. She's still lurking, but Robby has taken a step back. Then with Robby and Langdon, sad. They're a sad pair. Last year on TikTok, I saw someone comparing Langdon to a dog with the way he like begs for attention. This season isn't much different, but this is the first episode where we actually see them working together, and it is rough. I didn't even mean that. Oh, that's great. I love that. It feels like I'm watching a dog owner not understand how to use positive reinforcement, but what's most interesting is how they act around their patient. Langdon engages with her and answers all the questions as best as he can, whereas Robby barely even looks at her. But this changes when Langdon leaves. He's kind, he looks her in the eye, and he keeps her well informed. Robby is so pissed off at Langdon that he loses all emotional doctor skills when he's just within eyesight. And poor Langdon just has to take it. Okay, I pointed the arrow the wrong way. I don't know why I did an arrow. There we go. Al-Hashimi obviously sees this and can tell that Langdon isn't being treated fairly. And it's not just her. Even Whittaker feels bad about potentially implying that Langdon can't be trusted to prescribe drugs. And to be clear, Whittaker lives with Santos. There's no way that he hasn't had some sort of debrief about why Langdon was suspended by someone who hates him, but he still feels bad about being a tad insensitive about his problems. And then Ahmed, the security guard, says that everyone is happy to see Langdon is back. The only person with a problem is Robby, but Al-Hashimi has a set of fresh eyes. She knows about his problems, probably, but she only knows him from this shift and the work he's doing on this shift. She's very happy to let Langdon fully rejoin the team and get stuck back into work. Interestingly though, we haven't gotten much insight into how Langdon feels about Al-Hashimi. He's not shown any particular interest or disinterest. He seems much more preoccupied with rekindling his relationship with Robby. And as sad as this is, this feels like something that could really stand out. Now, so far, Al-Hashimi has been managing to win over members of the ER one by one. Last episode, she was very complimentary to Javadi, and this episode, we see Dana defending her about the prisoner dilemma. Sure, and she even has a little bit of banter with Whittaker. Sort of. I don't know if you'd call it banter. She made him laugh. I'm not saying that people are gonna abandon Robby because of this, but I feel like if everyone's so busy being won over by Al-Hashimi, then there might miss some stuff going on with Robby. On a slightly separate note, there's a scene with Robby and Al-Hashimi arguing, and the camera focuses on Langdon, who notices the argument, and it holds on him for a minute. There's no real resolution for this, but we see Langdon seeing how much these two are struggling to get along. I feel like that could come into play at some point in the future. Okay, let's go into our theories about the love-hate triangle arrow. So with all the focus being on Langdon wanting to reach out to Robby, I think we might be seeing a confrontation between the two about Robby's sabbatical. And none of this, wow, this feels like a big change for you, and this seems like a strange idea. No, I think Langdon's gonna snap at some point, tired of Robby not giving him the time of day, and really push his buttons about the motorcycle in the room. I mean, Langdon has spent the last 10 months basically in therapy. I wouldn't be surprised if he pulled out some crazy vocabulary to get Robby to confront his own feelings. And honestly, I feel like Langdon might be the only person who can do this. Anyone else has either known him for too long or not long enough. Dana and Abbott have definitely noticed that something is off, especially with the way that Dana talks about his fucking bike. But these guys are such old friends, I'm not surprised that they worry about pushing him too much and losing any trust that they have. Then Whittaker, who, yes, has seen Robby in a pretty vulnerable state, but he probably doesn't think it's his place to have this kind of conversation with his attending. He's still trying to create some level of trust between them. But Langdon is kind of in the perfect position. He knows Robby and... Excuse me. He knows Robby and certainly was comfortable with him, but there's no longer any trust between them to break. Langdon can push and push, and honestly this relationship is probably not going to get much worse. Plus the idea of Langdon low-key being Robby's savior just makes the fact that he wasn't even meant to be in today even more heartbreaking. In this fanfiction I've created in my head where Langdon manages to break down some of Robby's walls, there's 1,000 other timelines where the doctor didn't call out, or Langdon wasn't available, or Dana just decided not to call Langdon. I just think that this would be a perfect place to end their relationship this season, not fixed, but something new. Keeping with Robby and Langdon, I think we need to discuss why exactly Robby has such a problem with his former star resident. Well, he was his star resident, or best resident, if you want to put it into the exact words. In season 1, basically everyone knew Langdon as the the cocky and confident doctor. Sure, they liked him, but I'm gonna say that his unlikable personality was at the forefront of most people's minds when they thought about him. Whereas Robby saw how much of an asset he was to the Pitt. He even recommended him for the ED Medical Education Fellowship, which I think is just a very prestigious pathway to further education in the medical field, I think. So when it's discovered that Langdon has this addiction and he's even been committing malpractice to sustain it, mostly everyone's just happy that he's gonna go get the help that he needs, because they all saw him as a person first. Whereas Robby saw the doctor before the person and couldn't get over his betrayal to his oath and to his co-workers. Again, this is all speculation. I'm really hoping that we get some sort of conversation to confirm or deny this theory. Also, as a note, I don't think that Robby is a massive dick for thinking this way. He's obviously pretty fucked up in the head, so I feel like it's kind of understandable to want to just focus on the good aspects of one of his co-workers. Okay, I also want to talk about why Al-Hashimi is hovering around Robby a bit more. So we see in this episode that Robby is much more willing to step away from a patient Al-Hashimi is working with, whereas Al-Hashimi is not. Now, in her defense, I don't think she's neglecting other patients to do this, but there will be other patients she could be seeing. She says that she just wants to learn from Robby, but at this point, I'm wondering if there's maybe another reason. Now, I could really be talking out of my ass here, but is there a chance that Al-Hashimi has seen how Robby works or been told by Gloria and maybe doesn't trust him with patience? Now, this is definitely assuming the worst, and I've been trying not to do that with Al-Hashimi, but I wouldn't blame her for seeing Robby's bad temper and wanting to make sure it doesn't affect his work. But then again, we've also seen Al-Hashimi adapting to Robby's methods. When supervising Mohan, Whittaker, and Mel with a patient, she lets Mohan take charge, and then helps the other two come to their own conclusions about what care is needed. So maybe she is just trying to adjust as best she can, but I'm gonna keep an eye on how much she actually watches Robby. Overall, I think that the love-hate triangle arrow has some potential to do some interesting character work, even with the lack of interaction between Al-Hashimi and Langdon. Specifically with Robby, Al-Hashimi feels like the optimistic version of the attending he could or should be, whereas Langdon feels like a reminder of how he failed as a boss and a friend. Together, using the power of sneaking up on your boss when he least expects it, they could really throw a rock in Robby's totally mentally stable plans. Okay, so there's actually a lot I didn't get to talk about this episode so that I could focus on this trio, so let's get into a very hefty section of... Dana actually defends Robby over his sabbatical to Noelle. Even though she doesn't approve, she's still hoping for the best for him. Yote, besties, love them. Bonk. Okay, I'm gonna say this, and I might get cancelled, but I'm gay, and I get to say this. There's a new nurse, and he's definitely gay.
The stair strips did the trick.
CT's ready.
We already scanned him.
CT's ready.
Who's this gay nurse? He's not a new to us. New nurse to us, and he's gay. I'm so sorry to the actor who plays him. If you're not gay, it's fine. Like, sorry, I guess. You know, don't play him so gay then. Donnie doubled down on his bet about why the hospital is closed and says that it's going to be a sinkhole. What a fucking icon. Sinkhole!
That is crazy.
And for no reason as far as I can tell. They weren't discussing sinkholes. Unless I missed something, he just goes, I think it's a sinkhole. I changed my mind and I think it's a sinkhole. I think Robby and Noelle have been hanging out for like 7 weeks is implied, certainly. Mel and Whittaker are an underrated duo. We need to see more of them. I just stabbed myself. Mohan seems pretty confident about Langdon's rehab, which is interesting because I don't think we've really seen them interact before. It might say something more about how she feels about rehab rather than how she feels about Langdon. Whereas Whittaker feels like he might be more unsure about the rehab thing, maybe because of his connection with Santos or maybe something else. Mohan's mum is still calling her. Joy's grandmother had leukemia and her family had trouble with like getting the insurance and stuff. Kind of sad as fuck, but you know, Joy backstory. Okay, these last few are going to focus on Whittaker, Santos, and Ogilvy, because honestly, part of me wanted to make them the trio focus of this episode, because they were so funny. Whittaker tries to reach out and reconcile with Santos after they had a small falling out last episode, but it doesn't really go well. See, Santos strikes me as the type of person to let bad blood dry out, especially when it comes to just heated moments rather than actual wrongdoings. But Whittaker doesn't seem comfortable enough in their relationship to be letting things go like that yet. Ogilvy and Santos got teamed up this episode, which was pretty interesting. They got along well enough. Does anyone else get the vibe that Ogilvy is like a little bit obsessed with Santos? Bitch, that's a lesbian. Do not try it. Ogilvy got really passive aggressive with an unhoused woman, bitch, and he leaves all his rubbish around. Fucking slob of a man. This really means nothing, but Whittaker has the best face when Santos asks him to do the disimpaction. Also, Santos straight up stops doing charting to watch Ogilvy and Whittaker do the disimpaction, which is iconic behavior. Okay, while I have you here, we're gonna go over the Michael moments, because they're back. He didn't turn over a new leaf. I should have known. Okay, we're gonna start off soft. We're gonna talk about Louis. Robby goes to bring a beer to Louis, which is definitely bad, but it's not that bad. He cares about Louis' happiness more than he cares about his health, which maybe says something about how much Robby doesn't think that Louis is gonna get better. Robby also low-key tries to get Dana to start smoking again, It was kind of banter, but let's calm down. Okay, addiction is a real problem. You should know this by now. Robby also completely blows up at a patient's boss in front of her, which he had every right to do, but also maybe let's keep a bit calmer in front of the already panicking patient. I don't know, that was, half a point. And also I'll just put one down for the fact that he could only be nice to the patient once Langdon had left the room. Where's your professionalism? Robby, fucking go to therapy. Okay, that's the end of it for this episode. I hope we're all excited for the next one. Whatever it may bring.
Again, bud.
No! Don't do this to me. Make sure to check out TikTok and Instagram for little sneak peeks and little bits and pieces from each episode, and then serialized for written reviews and stuff. I'll chat to you all next Thursday. Bye!